Hello, everyone. This panel is titled Ayibobo, Dancing Deities in the Diaspora, Danced Religions of Afrikan Diasporic Spiritual Religious Traditions. I'm going to be introducing all of our panelists and our moderator. Our first panelist is director and co-founder, Jean Appolon. He is a choreographer and teacher based in Boston and Haiti. He trained and performed with the Vivian Gauthier Dance Company, the Folkloric Ballet of Haiti, Alvin Ailey, and the Joffrey American Ballet School. Apollon teaches at Boston Ballet and the Dance Complex. He was appointed a Brother Thomas Fellow and is on the 1804 list of Haitian American change makers. Apollon seeks to create a diverse community inclusive of all cultures, races, and backgrounds, and to use dance and community to transcend barriers. Welcome. I imagine everybody's like cheering, but welcome.
Thank you so much.
The next panelist is Isaura Oliveira. Isaura was born in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil, the cradle of African Brazilian culture, where African traditions and arts are maintained and nourished. Isaura is a multidisciplinary artist. Isaura is an actress, singer, dancer, costume designer, dance teacher, yoga instructor, choreographer, community leader, healer, activist, and an innovator. Isaura's expertise is African Brazilian cultural dance. Isaura is dedicated to studying the African roots of Brazilian sacred and popular dances, rhythms, chants, and performance rituals. Isaura also studied modern and contemporary dance techniques. Isaura's accomplishments as a cultural researcher, producer, artistic director, and educator are not limited to solo performance productions, but also collaborations with many artists, incorporating community members like her dance students and emergent artists. Spirituality and nature are Isaura's medicine, and ancestors are her guides. Thus, artistic and educational work is connected with her ancestrality. Isaura holds a BFA from the School of Dance, Federal University of Bahia, and won numerous awards in Brazil and the US for her research, choreography, projects, and performances. Welcome, Isaura.
Thank you. Good morning.
The next panelist is Charles Vincent Burwell, who began his musical training with the piano at age 7. A congressional scholar in leadership, Vincent received a BS in choral and vocal music education from Florida A&M University and his MFA from NYU Tisch. Organizations that he has worked with include the Lincoln Center Institute, National Dance Institute, Urban Bushwomen, Festival de Caribe in Santiago de Cuba in Cuba, Ile Aye in Salvador de Bahia, Brazil, the Bates Dance Festival, and the Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival. He has composed music for the Cairo Opera House Ballet and Modern Dance Company in Cairo, Egypt, the National Dance Institute under the artistic direction of Jacques d'Amboise in Shanghai, China, and has sung at Carnegie Hall in New York City. His music was featured in the HBO documentary Jacques d'Amboise in China, The Other Side of the World. A musical theater, composer, and lyricist and creative, Vincent, with writing partner James D. Sasser and his producing team, 959 Group, currently has multiple projects in development while serving as a senior partner at the Clever Agency. He currently serves as professor of theater at the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley, where he teaches entrepreneurship for the theater artist and race and identity in performance. Vincent was initiated as Fadiji Ola Sunkami Adepetu into Ifá by the Honorable Babalao Chief Fakayode Fanini Agbongbon Awo of Osogboland, Osun State, and is a member of the Ogundase Ifá Temple under the direction of Chief Seku Aosanmi Oshuntogun Alaje. Welcome, 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 welcome. The next panelist is Andrea E. Woods Valdés, who is chair of the Duke University Dance Program teaching modern dance and dance for the camera. She is currently in her PhD studies at Texas Women's University, Her work explores Black aesthetics and intercultural and interdisciplinary dialogues and activities between Black women artists throughout the African diaspora. Solo works, Andrea E. Woods, and dancers recently celebrated 20 years of dancing and dance making. Woods Valdés is a former dancer and rehearsal director of Bill T. Jones and Arnie Zane Dance Company from 1989 to 1994. Her art and scholarship draw from African American diaspora history and culture and Afro-Cuban dance and music to perform embodied folklore, In 2016, she founded Women at Work, an intergenerational, interdisciplinary performance to develop Black audiences for Black women's creative work. Woods Valdés directed Duke in Ghana from 2012 to 2014 and is a founding member of the Collegium for Afrikan Diasporic Dance. Her work has taken her to Cannes, Taiwan, Russia, Senegal, Morocco, Korea, Poland, Singapore, Belize, Yucatan, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Ghana, Trinidad, Barbados, Cuba, and throughout the US. She has received grants from the Jerome Foundation, the National Dance Project, National Performance Network and Arts International, and is a recipient of the NC Arts Council Artist Fellowship. Welcome.
Good morning and thank you. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
The final panelist is Baba Oludaré Bernard, a Yoruba Lukumi healing arts practitioner. His experience shows him that personal freedom for Black and non-Black African descendants can come from celebrating Afro-ancestral lineages of breathing and wellness. He's the author of Breathing with Orisha, the first book ever written that refocuses African diaspora movement from the realm of entertainment back to the sacred purpose of wellness and deep breathing. In this time of global pandemic, increased stress, isolation, and anxiety, Oludaré has developed a revolutionary breathing technique that enhances spiritual clarity, respiratory and physical wellness, and liberation through the practice of Afro-ancestral respiratory rituals that would otherwise be solely deemed as forms of entertainment after the onset of the transatlantic slave trade. In the dawning of a wellness era, Oludaré brings breathing with Orisha to the world as an addition to yoga, qigong, and other globally accepted breathwork and wellness techniques. Africa gave birth to us all. Amen. Her medicine, her breath, her dance, exhale, and song, when dedicated to internal and community breathing, provide all people the opportunity to realign with global and spiritual interconnectivity and compassion. Oludaré respects all sacred social Afro-ancestral movement, song, and prayer rituals as breath work, wellness work, and meditation. Through Breathing with Orisha, he brings these rituals and their Black African descendant bodies, minds, and spirits to the global industrial conversation of meditation and breath work in the 21st century. Welcome.
Thank you. Peace. Happy to be here.
And finally, our moderator for this panel is our very own Nadia, Milad, Issa. Okay, I'll chill. Nadia will graduate from Harvard Divinity School with the Master of Theological Studies with an area focus in African and African American Religious Studies in May of 2022. Nadia is a research associate at the Pluralism Project, contributing their research experiences in Afro-Caribbean spiritual religious traditions. At Harvard Divinity School, they continue their work on spiritual reparations in Regla de Ocha-Ifá and other Black Caribbean diasporic traditions and on Black Cuban women, Apollon and Apollon. Nadia spent over 3 years in Cuba and Mexico pursuing fieldwork and dance study, for both research projects that take form as autoethnographies and dance choreographies, expanding reparation politics and politics of being, and Apollon in Cuba and its diaspora. Nadia is a company dancer with Jean Appolon Expressions, a Haitian contemporary dance company. Nadia has received training from and performed in dance works by Bill T. Jones, Arnie Zane, B.B. Miller, Barbara Balbuena, Yanisalt Galata Calvo, Eva Despaine Trujillo, and Obini Bata, Camille A. Brown, and Emilio Hernandez Gonzalez, amongst others. Nadia and panelists, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sadie. Oh, just wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to introduce us. Y'all, we made it. We're here. Hello. Come on. I'm so happy. Okay, before we jump into this, because I want us to have time to just discuss, right? Just a little more of a grounding of what this panel is. So this panel is focusing on African diasporic spiritual religious traditions, right? That have significant dance traditions to them, right? That dance is very integral in all ceremonies, initiations, and ritual practices. So I, along with my colleagues here, we will be discussing not only the history of these dance traditions, a little bit, of Vodou, Candomblé, maybe some Umbanda, Traditional Ifá, Regla de Ocha-Ifá, amongst others. But we're also going to talk about their roles in two spaces, right? In the sacred space, in the Vodou, in the Ile, in our homes, and also in the secular, right? So what does it mean to bring it onto the stage? What does it mean to train and receive training, right? And hold like a BA in folklore, right? And so we're going to talk about that. And also as dance practitioners and dance makers, we're going to talk about how that looks like in our composition, in our dance choreography. So that's the grounding for this. A lot of dance, a lot of movement, a lot of embodied knowledge here. Spirit told me I need to start this with like how we start every ceremony almost, with just a bit of libation. It's a omituto. So basically it's an opening with elegua, and I have my mason jar of water that is full of bubbles. And so when you see any thing holding water that has a lot of bubbles, that's when spirit is present, right? So there's that. So I'm gonna do a quick omituto for elegua. Elegua is, or papalegba, right? Is the Orisha, is the Loa that is opening and closing all of our roads, right? So he'll open up our opportunities as much as he'll close them. He is at the crossroads before any ceremony or initiation happens. After we ask Egung, our ancestors, for permission to continue, we also have to ask Elegua, right? We need his bendición, his blessing. So we'll do this real quick. Omi tuto, ona tuto, ile tuto, tuto laroye, awari kumbabawa. All right, Ache, Ayibobo. Now we can start, all right? Now we can start. So how I have this format is that I just want us to talk. I don't want anyone on a time crunch. I don't want it to be that we go in a particular order. We already have a flow here. We already have a kin here. So I'll just open up. If anybody wants to start, just give us a little bit of a context of what Vodou or Candomblé or Traditional Ifá or Regla de Ocha, what is that, right? Or if you work with ancestors, right, and not exactly initiated, what is the traditions you've been surrounded by? So maybe, I don't know, Jean, I'll pick on you. Yeah. And then we'll go ahead and you speak from your heart, but tell us a little bit about Vodou.
Vodou to me, it's really a way of life, and also being in deep connection with your birthplace. Because I think, like, not knowing anything about voodoo, I was completely lost about getting the truth of what Haiti really represent to me, not only to the world, but what Haiti represent to me. I think when I got initiated in 2006 into the voodoo tradition, because I was dancing, I was, learning the culture and the dance companies and dance classes that I was taking in Haiti. But a lot of the time I did not know that initiation really show you what Haiti is really about. And for me, going through this process was a process of loving myself again, knowing myself again, and loving my fellow Haitians, despite of the trauma that I suffered in 1991, having my father being killed in Haiti. Because after my father was killed in Haiti, I felt like, every Haitian was against me. or was pretty much something that I do not want to be anymore. And even my mother was like, I don't know why you want to go back to Haiti to even initiate, because, you know, this country really did a lot of wrong to you. So it's when I went to my initiation process, I was able to really heal and really forgive my country and my people, and understanding that human beings are very complex, and we are made with a lot of elements that will make us peaceful, will make us deranged, sometimes will make us off balance or in balance. So I learned that through the initiation of Vodou, and really knowing that the drums that we play, the elements that really make us Black, are important. They are. Whatever the stigma that the world created around Black people is this. Voodoo is dark. Voodoo. And when I got to that initiation, I can sit down firmly in front of anybody, a pastor or anybody, to say, no, voodoo is not what you're trying to describe it to be. Voodoo is part of a tradition, it's part of a people, and it's really what gave me freedom. And that's what gave my ancestry freedom also to be still alive and still facing the adversities that they're trying to still put on our people when it comes to Haiti, but also a lot of other Black countries who practice, traditional ancestry. So that's what I can say that, Voodoo represent to me.
Amazing. Can you give us a little bit more basics? So I know Regla de Ocha-Ifá, the deities that we talked about as the Orishas. Can you just give a little more context on Vodou? Maybe, while keeping the sacred secrets to ourselves, but maybe some of the initiation one goes through, or like that kind of journey.
I was a child of deity they call Mambo Saint Helene. When I was getting initiated, that's what my house, my temple where they initiate me. And to me, that was very also interesting, because women to me represent so much. And my mother is pretty much, if you're talking about like Virgin Mary, I think Virgin Mary is really my mother, because my mother represents that kind of power. And everything that I do, I'm mostly around females most of the time. Like my mother, my classmates my good friends were always female. And to see when I'm getting initiated, I had this female spirit, Mambo Saint Helene, which is a very powerful woman who is a mother, but also a major healer. And when my spiritual father said it, which is my cousin, who initiated me, said to me that, you're going to be initiated with Mambo Saint Helene being your matron. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But also I'm a child of Ogu. I'm a child of Dantor, which is a deity who has a lot of fierceness, but also a lot of healing. Because a lot of the time when people are looking for healing and peace, they really call on Dantor. But also there's another deity, the deity of the dead, which is Wawilakwa, who also dance in my body every November. So I am very pleased to really know that I have so much elements around of me who kind of guiding me to a process of continue to be a servant, continue to be a healer, continue to be a choreographer, continue to be a human being. I am very pleased with all these elements, but also the initiation process also too. It's a place where you feel like rebirth. And I feel like every Haitian person at the age of 15, they should put them to the process of initiation, because initiation really give you that in-depth knowledge in who you are and what your purpose is on this earth. And being able to be in a place for 8 days. Long time ago, it used to be 21 days. But now people try to cut it down because there's so much to do. Everybody's working. So they put it down to 8 days, but you still have the process of those 21 days to do on your own term or on your other times to really achieve them. But that 8 days of concentration knowing other friends of yours or other brothers and sisters who are in that temple with you, knowing the songs, knowing the leaves that can treat you for any kind of type of cancer or any type of other disease before you even go to the doctor, knowing that you have so much with the earth, where you come from, the way the earth is so important, the trees, the sun, the moon, the way you can do remedies during certain times and certain time of day. All this knowledge, I feel like it was a PhD moment. I feel like it was a PhD moment, because for you to retain all this knowledge, but also to be able to put them into practice was another great thing. And when I'm being called on by a friend or a family member to say, even my mother, who's very into church and Christian, sometimes things are very rough in the house. And she said, you know, why don't you go and light a candle and just trying to really have a dream to see what's going on? And I'm like, well, you have that power too. You can do the lighting of the candle also yourself if you want to do. But to me, I feel very, very blessed and grateful and humble at the same time to be able to hold this, because I feel like my grandfather wanted to leave me that gift, but my grandfather died when I was here and we didn't have a chance to even talk. My father also too, before he was killed, he was always writing. You see, my father always writing every day. My father was writing in this notebook. And I said to my dad when I was maybe 12, what is that in that notebook? And he was like, whenever you are old enough to understand, I will pass this notebook to you. But I never find the notebook because our house was ransacked and I was running and hiding. So, but all this knowledge, it's like something that I think I was getting ready for. But I'm grateful that I was able to go back to my family and get, you know, all these great things transferred to my responsibility.
Ayibobo, Jean.
Ayibobo.
Anyone else?
I'll say something. Good morning, everybody. I'm so pleased and honored to be here. I am, my field or form is modern dance. I am a daughter of Oshun, initiated as a daughter of Oshun. My name is Iyalosha Okan Oni, Omo Oshun Abetibi Orula. And I came to my spiritual Orisha Yoruba self through learning the dances and music first. So that study and curiosity, and it affects and permeates every aspect of my life. And maybe just for a broad context, and other people can definitely fill in, Regla de Ocha, the order of the Orisha, is a spiritual practice, a philosophy, but it is a way of life, of conducting yourself 24 hours, the way that you approach other people. It is an earth-centered spirituality that draws from the ancestors and honors our ancestors. So everything that we do comes from the legacy behind us. And that's not only the positive, it's the positive and the negative. It's about putting your life in balance. It's about putting your community in balance. It's about acknowledging the negative and the positive and working always forward toward best practices, best ways of being. Iwapele, as Oludaré said yesterday, good character, gentle character. So we're constantly reinforcing that. And our rituals and spiritual practices include dance and music and song. And what we're here for, this embodiment, that we actually, our bodies, our practice is the activism, it is the prayer. So all of this comes through the physical. And I have to give praise and honor to people who introduced me to this way of life. And one of them is the founder of Women of the Calabash, Madeline Yayodele Nelson Ibaye, and presently also a mentor of mine and an elder, Iya Nirvana Buckley, the spirit of my father, Ibaye, my mother in Pennsylvania, and my godmother in Cuba, and all my godchildren. So it's like you you're part of a family and a network. The initiation process is very intense. It lasts 7 to 8 days, but then you spend another year being a yawo, which is like a newborn, and you're treated like a baby. If you think you like, there's certain things that we can't say, that are sacred, but for instance, when you go outside, you could imagine having a newborn baby. You wouldn't just like send it outside with no hat, no coat, no covering, you do all of these things. And that's the way you treat your spirit and your body during that year, even in terms of physical contact, because your spirit is very open. So there's a sense of sacredness and a sense of protection, but there's also great Oshun. People always think of, which is true, sexuality, sensuality, all of these things, honey in the river, but Oshun is an emissary of the higher creative power, and she's an emissary for great compassion. She spent transformed herself into a vulture, Ibukole, that's my road. She's transformed herself into a vulture to rise high, to ask for salvation for humanity, that people would have food to eat and ways to live. And so that kind of self-sacrifice, isn't always encapsulated in the characteristics of Oshun. So these are the ways that I go about teaching. These are the things that I incorporate into my choreography as a contemporary modern dancer, and also into scholarship. It's Orisha Epistemology. This means that my grandmother, if I'm talking about ancestors, my grandmother is affirmed and validated as a wise woman in this practice, as a Black American, that I don't skip over, the generations right here, my auntie who passed away, my uncle who passed away. So this is a short, just a short touch into it. And I think other people can elaborate also from their experience a little more. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna speak after you because yes, just because as you spoke about our shared experience of Regla de Ocha and the Yaworahe and going through the year of white, I'm so thankful, so thankful for this gift of Orisha in my life. I became a priest when I was 13 years old because I knew it was going to save my life. I knew I wanted to be a priest at 9 years old, and I became a priest when I was 13 years old. So just for folks who are out there looking for initiation, if you say you want it now and it don't happen right away, it's okay. Because even me having it as early as I did in my life, I still had to wait. I still had to do the work that was necessary before I went into the initiation room. And so much of that work is ancestral veneration. So much of that work is like being willing to face the problems that are right in front of our face, that are right in our families, that are in our spirit, that's in our community. Because once you make Ocha and once you open yourself up to your spirituality, and like be initiated, like that's the beginning of the journey. Like that's the beginning. And that's when we start really doing the work that is unraveling a lot of the trauma intergenerationally or within ourselves presently, and start working on the medicine. And I love how Iya said that you can't skip over mom, you can't skip over grandma. One thing that I always say is that I am umbilically connected to God. I'm connected to God through my umbilical cord. My mother is the first God that I ever knew. My father is the first God that I ever knew, because if we keep going back and back and back, we get to the origin. And so we have to respect the journey that our ancestors made through Ma'afa, through the slave trade, through here. I always pay homage to my great-great-grandmother, Mama Mamie Warnock, who taught African Americans how to speak English down during the Jim Crow era, when you can literally be hung for that, for knowing how to read and knowing how to prosper, right? Or figure things out in this country. And I pay homage to her because it was that work of learning how to master this world that we live in currently right now for me to even relearn how to say the word Oshun, right? For me to even relearn Yoruba that's already been in my blood, but for me to relearn that, she had to learn and master how to be here in America through slavery from nothing. So I pay homage to all of the Oshun and the ancestors that came before me that allowed me to even be here today. And if I could say anything about my culture, if I could say anything about Orisha, about Vodou, about 21 divisions, about Palo, about all these African ancestral traditions that are all cousins, right? When we do our research, like that's not something to be debated. All of these cultures, Vodou, Candomblé, Umbanda, the Regla de Ocha-Ifá, Palo, all of these different cultures, they all come from cousin traditions. You know, these are all people who are very closely tied together. We can see the same words in these different cultures when we break down the different songs and spiritualities. So what I'll say about these cultures is that it's about making sure that I am being as true to myself and my makeup as possible, about the journey that my ancestors have taken, the steps that I am taking, and the steps that I will take to, again, put my best foot forward, to have Iwa Pele, good character, gentle character, Iwa Sulu, to be calm, to be gentle, to be patient, and make the best out of this life. And right now we're in a time where patience is a virtue that's necessary, right? There are a lot of folks who are gone bankrupt, who don't have jobs, who are constantly stressed about COVID-19, who are looking for themselves spiritually, right? So there are some real life issues going on around the world. So this is the perfect time for folks to focus on handling who they are, knowing who they are, and managing some of the stress and trauma to make the best decisions possible.
Okay, I can try. I am enjoyed to just hear everybody talk. Hi, I'm honored to be here too. My name is Isaura Oliveira. I was born and raised in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. I moved to the United States in 1996, and it's very hard not to live on your own country where your mother culture is. And so you have to bring your culture to the country where you are. So even though in back and forth, going to Brazil, in the beginning of everything, when I decided to be a dancer, I was already exposed to the culture. And I imagine I want to be an artist because of the culture that we have in Brazil, because what I see on the streets, and nothing was nothing hide on my time. I could be, I have easy access to all this complex that is part of our culture. Since I'm very young, like in my 9s, 10s, so I was educated in a private school. That's mean in Catholic school, right? And I guess 9 and 12 years old, I was oriented that I have to do a primeira comunhão, the first communion. And I went through the whole process like you to any class that you take. And I hate it. And I don't want to do it. I don't like this. And I never really have any excitement until probably my aunts, my grandmother, somebody in my family said, you're gonna have a long dress, you're gonna be able to walk to the church. So you're gonna have music, you're gonna have this. So I start to imagine that I'm gonna have a performance. And then I just was only what was in my mind. But the whole preparation was really everything by force. I didn't have the question, how you feel? I don't remember that. So I was engaged only on that dress on the choreography that was just walking, and that will be something special for me. So I didn't understand. That's how religion was introduced to me. So I didn't like religion, and I don't wanna have this in my life. 9 years old is too young to make this kind of thought and decision. But I do remember have a herb bath. My auntie that was benzadeira, all the time that we have this little sickness, fever here and there, and come tia Zelinha with herbs, and that was so good. I love the smell. That I didn't know anything about religion. Nobody introduced me that was a religion. So I have this and that, tea here, bath, things like that. So I start to like this way of take care of my health, my life, when I was sad, when I was this, when I was that. So I imagine, like I am today in my 60s, that I like spirituality, not necessarily religion. That was what I was experiencing at that time. And in and out of religion, I stick on the spirituality, and I stick on the connection with ancestors, because those elders who bathe me in herbs, who teach me here and there, they are my ancestors. They are the ones that guide me. Because I'm born in Brazil, because Bahia was the beginning of African Brazilian culture, because spirituality and religion is real in African cultures, I was attracted to the Candomblé. Through dance, through performance, not necessarily going there in the house yet. I was young and I was not introduced on that. I even didn't know I have this in my family. Everything is hide, everything like not present freely how the Catholicism was to me. So I became an artist first. When I was introduced to Orisha's dance, and it was so short, soon I had to perform and go to Germany, Belgium. It was my first performance in Orishas. And the day of the performance, the first show, I received the costumes, and everything was equal, the dress and the Candomblé. Even though I was not practitioner in the Candomblé, but I knew how was the costume, the props and everything. I didn't understand why I have to dress as Orisha to go to the stage to perform. The performance is a representation, is an art. So I didn't like that too. So I was someone who was very clear what I like, what I don't like it. And that first experience as a dance Orishas, dressing as Orishas and have to imitate the imitation, I didn't like it. I think I was disrespectful. If me as an artist can go to the stage and perform fake that I receive a spirit and I'm dance and I have all that stuff, I'm the respect those people. And look, I was not introduced to be someone the Candomblé. So right there in the middle of all this confusion, since my 9 years old until when I decided to be an artist, I have been little by little putting things, not me, but the guidance that I received from elders, from ancestors, and intuition, my Yuapele. I was putting things in place. When I am a performer, when I take care of myself as a person, my medicine, my guidance, my education, my options, and my high respect for a tradition, for elders, for history. So, and I am on this. I am not a yellow Orisha. I'm a practitioner of the African ancestrality in Brazil. And living in the United States, living outside of Brazil, I have been encounter my brothers and sisters from different traditions from the African diaspora. And I am sure, even though I have my beginning introduction, initiation on the Candomblé de Caboclo, we call everything Candomblé, but not everything is Candomblé. It's not everything is Yoruba. We're not gonna be, express the whole complex that we have in our traditions. But when I was introduced to the initiation of the Candomblé de Caboclo, is a mix of Congo Bantu, native indigenous. On the ritual, we have to pray the Catholic words, chants, and this sent me away again. So I make a decision to respect the spirituality, to learn, to have this, to take care of myself, and let naturally guidance from ancestors guide in my journey in earth. So I have been learning, and I still learning Orisha's dance, Caboclo's dance. That's what I teach. And as I practice, I discover myself what ancestors are telling me. When we dance for Xumaré, and I see Ayibobo there, and I see the technique of the spine, I see the power of Kundalini, everything is connected. So as today I'm here, I see that traditions, all those traditions are alive. We live every day, is a way to live, is a way to connect with each other, is a way of you take care of your health, it's a way of you communicate with the nature, and mostly in everything, Orishas are the nature elements and plus. So we are the guardians of the mother nature. And what we experience today, that we have to be inside, basically alone, unless you are online all the time, is a great opportunity for us to reveal life. So in this moment today is incredible because we have many generations here, and we are revisit and continue make our own history. We are not guide what others say about us. This is the moment that we say what we experience in life. And this is Candomblé, this is Vodou, this is what is supposed to be. You live, you experience, and this is part of your journey. Never die, doesn't come from the sky. We make it. So, thank you.
Ashe, Maestra Isara. Thank you. Baba Fadiki.
Yes, so much has been said. I'll speak speak on my matriculation. It primarily began similar to a number of people through the arts. And I think about why that is. So many people are drawn to these these spiritual systems through the arts. And I think it's because artists take what's on the inside of them and put them on the outside of them for all of the world to see. And that's a risk. That takes a certain degree of risk. And it is a risk to step outside of the socially accepted norm of Christianity in this country, or Islam in other nations, and other very large and well-known spiritual systems. So this this became mine, and I was brought to it when I was in undergrad, and I'd been around it because I'd been around performance. And if you are in performance in any way in this country, then you, whether you know it or not, have been introduced to the way of the Orisha, because every system of performance in that's come out of this country has been touched by it, if not born out of it. We just don't know it. A lot of people just don't know it. So I was in and around it, around the drum and dance community, as a musician, as a dancer, and as a percussionist. And so it was always around me. Now it was much easier for me it would have been much easier for me to remain within a Christian ideology. And that's not to say that I'm not, but I required more information. There was a degree of connection that I really needed to other things that weren't necessarily being approached. Connections weren't being made, and this kept calling me. And that's one of the things that when people talk about, it just called me. It called to me. It called to my spirit. And so that's why it is my spiritual practice. I think that religion is limiting, and the concept of religion is limiting. Spirituality is like the sky. It just keeps going. You see blue, but on the other side of that is black, and it just keeps going, and there is no end in sight. And that's what I am drawn to, an understanding of that. Ifá called me. There is a synchronicity of religious practices that I found, and I do have to tip my fila to, oh, I'm sorry. I do have to, Zoom life. I do have to tip my hat to Chief Awosami Sekou-Olaje. He took it upon himself to travel to Southeast Asia. And when he returned, his good friend, and when he returned, he spoke to how much synchronicity there was. That lets us know that it's bigger than characterizing it as a box. And so, and viewing it like, okay, this is not a spiritual practice or a spiritual path. This is simply a path. And we put it into a box. And so I was looking to extend beyond that. Ifá as a practice is similar to any other practice, medicine, law, anything else. You study, you learn, you can believe it or not, but you follow this remedy, do these things, and this will likely happen. And it's a wisdom that has grown, that has been honed for longer than we've recorded time. And so it is a system that is a blueprint for a lot of other aspects of our life. It's an endless abyss of information. And I was drawn to that. And I continue to learn, but I largely learn by how I apply it in my life. And as an artist, as an academic, as a performer, as a humble scholar, I try to apply it in my life in that manner of speaking, because it is wisdom. And it is the coming together of a number of different concepts manifesting in remedies to help us stay on our path towards our destiny. And destiny has always been important to me. I've always wanted to understand my relationship with the universe. And so that's how I ended up where I am. I am but an owl, and I always will be, because the information is just too vast. It's too vast. Everybody in my house has an abyss of information that I can only touch. And because they are pulling from their experiences as well and applying it using the practices of Ifá, of Orisha, of the spiritual Kumi, of all of these spiritual systems and spiritual practices, and bringing it all together. And I think that as long as we do that, we can look at it as the impetus for the performance, the reason for the performance, as opposed to a side note to it, which In these days, it can become, because of fancy costumes, great colors, ocean and love and all of that. And as Andrea said, it's only a piece. You're only seeing a piece of the embodiment of who and what this Orisha encompasses. Are the masses willing to do a deep dive? And many times they're not. And that's why we have to be here. Thank you.
Ache, beautiful. And to take us, that's a beautiful segue to get into what is the role of dance and movement in our ceremonies. I remember Maestra Isaura and I were talking about, it's almost as though we have choreographies, right? Not that we're making these dances, but that we have repeating movements that we have to do alongside actual dance in our ceremonies. There's, it's a very body intensive. We're talking about spiritualities that are very body intensive. You got to clean this, you got to haul this, you got to lift this. It's a lot of, you got to put your body into it, right? You got to clean this, you got to serve the food. It's a lot of work, right? So what is body, what is the dance, what is the movement in these practices, right? And how can we, or how are they brought to communities outside of that? We talked about like bringing it to the stage, right? How do we bring the altars to the stage, right? And how do we do it in a way that it is impetus, right? Let's see, maybe.
I can definitely say to me, every time I go, even before my initiation, every time I go to a ceremony, it was always like, oh my God, like it's an event. It's like watching the queen coming out of their palace, or the king coming out of their palace and just get into a temple. I felt like everybody inside of that temple, initiate or non-initiate, I look at them like they were gods to me. Because to see the drummers on their section, the altar is there, but people dressing at different colors for the ceremonies, and people starting to get, mostly with the prayers before the ceremony, the way you hear everybody is humming the rituals prayers that we have. And to see that without any kind of book to tell you how to do this, to see that people get involved in doing them, to me, that was very special. But bringing it to the stage is, I always offer my dancers, even my foreign dancers who's not from Haiti, I bring them to Haiti and I make sure that most of the time they assist a ceremony, or to even be in the presence of that kind of feel, so they can really see how voodoo is really expressed. Because if you don't show that, they're never going to understand the authenticity of it. And to me, bringing it on stage is not like trying to bring my voodoo tradition on stage. It's just really trying to educate people about what it looks like. And the elements that I bring with me on stage is just really to educate people and talk about the beauty of it and the strength of it, and be able to really imitate an altar, even though it's not really a sacred one, but it's something that I want people to see. Because a lot of the time, I think all of us are curious, and the audience who come to watch what we do, they really want to know. And holding the knowledge, or hiding the knowledge, I've seen a lot of Haitian teachers of mine done that. Oh, I don't want to show that because this is something sacred. Yes, it is sacred, but there is also a way of diluting the secret and be able to tell people this is something which is part of the element of voodoo. And sometimes they present it that way, but we as human beings, when we get initiated or we become the owner of this practice, it's our duty also to be able to educate the mass and really have the mass understand that there are powerful practice that can really help them heal when it comes to mental illness. I think, as my brothers were telling earlier, about how they can really go to search for resources. They can find healing. They can find peace. They can find joy. Because a lot of people are investing a lot of money now in voodoo tradition in Haiti, and now voodoo becomes like an element of how to make money, but not really an element of how it is to create healing. So people are just like going, I have people, just last week I was talking to somebody who was like, oh, you know, this woman asked me $29,000 to do some kind of work for me. I'm like, darling, you're saying $29,000, but you cannot be too interfering into people's business, because people find a way now. I think the desperation make also a lot of Mercury thing happening when it comes to tradition and religion, and people are using every realm to make their money. But at the same time, I think for me, it's educating my community as much as I can so they can be aware of the good and also the bad that there is in the practice, because some people use it also for their own profit.
Yes, Jean. Just to quickly tag on to that, I know at least in Regla de Ocha-Ifá, when I'm in Cuba, I studied at Issa, which is the University of Arts in Havana. And a long time ago, it was actually a requirement for dance students who were majoring in folklore, in Afro-Cuban folklore dance, to go to tambores or huemileres, which are the ceremonial ritual festives of Regla de Ocha-Ifá with the drum and the dance. And it's usually organized for several motivations. It might just be that you promised an Orisha a tambor, or you are celebrating your Ocha birthday, right? Because when you are rebirthed, when you initiate, now you have a whole other age, right? You have a whole other birthday. And so I know that it was a requirement before for them to assist so that they can really understand the depth of what they're introducing to their bodies, the dance, the gestures, right? Because these dances are very gestural, right? They're narrative based. So it ties onto pataquis, right? In Regla de Ocha-Ifá, it ties onto different experiences of the Orishas, right? And so what happens in a tambor is that it's in our homes, right? We don't have an official temple. You clear out a living room and boom, we got 30 people packed in there with your drums, the bata, right? The bata drums are 3 separate double-headed drums. And what happens is that it's, at least for me, I'm usually dancing pretty small because I don't have a lot of room. I got like inches maybe. But what I've noticed in my research and in my dance study is that in the sacred space, it's very internal, right? It's for you, you're here because you're with the Orisha, okay. But once it gets put on stage, right, you have to dance because you're on a proscenium stage, right? You have to dance so big and so external so that people in the far back can see you, right? So that's kind of what I've noticed in terms of the dance of the Orishas, from the sacred of being this internal sphere to being very, very external, very, very big and very, very fast.
I mean, that's one of the things I was going to say, is that there are extremely different circumstances. Orisha and how Maestra Isaura was mentioning, for presentation in costume and even commercial purposes or national representation, and then what happens in ceremony are very distinct things. I think they both have their validity. They both have their place as we draw on resources from our African ancestry and culture, and that's what we want to make, use for our work or teaching. But then there's the secret and the sacred that happens in religious ceremony. So they're very, very distinct things. But I wanted to comment on when you talked about the role of the body, and my current interest in research is about Black women aesthetics from an embodied perspective, not just like,
Yeah. Go ahead, Nadia.
She's dancing.
Could you hear me? I'm sorry. I think I put something to the microphone. Can you hear me?
You're good. Now we hear you perfect.
So I was going to say something that Ntozake Shange talks about is dance for her made her Black woman's body and her past and her ancestral past tangible. And that's one of the things, whether in the theater or in your private sacred or your religious spiritual community, dance makes the spirit become tangible in a way that we can see it, we can touch it, we can enact it. And we need that. We need our blood to be circulating. We need our breath to be moving. We did so much of that last night. We saw it on stage in Jean's work and his dancers, and all of that needs to be manifest. We need it visually in the veve. We need it spiritually. We need the food. We need the color. We need the numbers. So I think our bodies, our people, ourselves, I'm reluctant to call us bodies, we're people. The Orisha come down and bring those messages forward, and that it touches us physically. You start to feel the warmth in your body. You start to feel your heart rate raise, and then eventually you come down from that. Much longer. It's a whole journey between the going up and the coming down. But our bodies are what are the vehicle to take us on that journey and to contain it. It has to have its container, and that's part of, Baba Vince said, it's a part of, it's an aspect of what is happening to us. And this is a religion, a spirituality, a practice. Different people have a different perspective, but it's passed on voice to voice. The Odu is passed on voice to voice. The prayers it's an oral spirituality. We have so much written now, and we have so many advantages with the internet, but it really has to happen from voice to voice and from body to body. The books are wonderful. I'm a studier. I love books. I keep saying, I'm not going to get another book, and I'll see something and say, oh, but I better read this book. You go down the rabbit hole, but it really is body to body. I need to be in Isara's class. I need to do the breathing with Oludaré, whether it's on the internet or I get to, personally, and I need to be in Charles's presence. I need to be in the room and smell Jean's dancers sweating in front of me. So that's what the body does. It's all of our senses. This is a sensory oriented way of life, and the body is what can do all of that, from the herb baths to our feet on the floor, to our touching our own bodies, to our touching our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I just when John was talking now, I wanted to, my mind remind myself that we are doing our work. We are artists. We artists, we create, we transform, and we can share. We that have link on the tradition and on the stage, we also have to protect our tradition. When I share something to my students or to the audience, I have to select what I share. And also I can recreate that reality. And this is what to be an artist, right? I don't have to copy how Oxumaré dress on the terreiro in Brazil, but I can create a kind of skirt with a piece of fabric and a lean this and that, and create a costume, but I don't have to copy that. On my beginning, when I started to see the folkloric groups performing, it was like, try to copy, even copying rituals and put on the stage. It has been changed, but in the beginning was this. Why was this? Because this was the probably only opportunity that Black artists have at that time to perform their own reality. Folkloric group has open paths to travel around the world, but they have to bring their tradition, their secret. All these international tourneys that have with folkloric group from anywhere, from Brazil, from Cuba, from Haiti, who buy our performance, they want to see what we have there in our land. But as artists, it's our work to protect our tradition, bring to the stage art, and those secrets should maintain there. If anybody wanna learn more or be part of, you have to go there. Don't come to my dance class and think you are initiate. I'm a storyteller. No. So there is a big danger on this, on visit. Oh, I lost my image here. People invade our space, our sacred space. They take it and they do whatever they wanted to do. And people who don't belong on our ethnicity, people who don't have our own ancestors. I had some conflict with people who are not from African descendants, but they did the initiation and they get some hierarchy position on Candomblé and confront me. And then today I don't answer anymore. I just ask, when you pray for your ancestors, who you see? You can't come to me because you are initiated, but you are not part of my ancestrality link, and you try to disrespect me and show off. You can't. Those traditions are correlate with our ancestrality. For me, if my neighbor that's the same ancestrality as me, and then is not practicing the same tradition, don't even care about, I will never disrespect the person. If it's someone who is not part of this link come and disrespect us, there is something very, very serious there. So we artists, if we have access to both, we have obligation to protect those traditions as we make available. We make available as an art.
Hi. I just wanted to speak about the way that dance empowers me in the ceremony. I think about my elders, and that the reason for our dance is so that we can feel life in our bodies, so that the sick are able to walk again, so that the elders who used to, move and shake and now maybe need a cane will feel energized enough to stand up and use that cane and move again. The power of Orisha that literally lives in our bodies, the power of our ancestors that literally lives in our bodies, it has to be awakened. Just like anything else, you have to hit the ignition, you have to turn the light on. And I feel, and it's an embodied feeling, that our dance is the way that we turn that light on. We're made of mostly water, and we have these bellows in our chest called lungs that when we use them and we breathe and we undulate and we use that mind, body, full holistic movement of that undulation through the spine, we're moving that water body. We're moving that blood through our body. We're literally moving the marrow, the DNA, the electric impulses, the nerve endings in our bodies that hold all of this ashe. And so with that, we bring so much life to the table. We bring our ancestors to the table. We bring the Orisha to the table, and they come through speaking. They come through healing. They come through cleansing. They come through screaming. They come through dancing. They come through doing all of the things that we do as people. And so one thing I just want to make sure that I say on this panel is that it doesn't matter what language I speak with my Orisha. Orisha can never leave me. I can never leave Orisha. Initiation isn't what connects me to my Orisha. I was already connected. That's another form of commitment that I've made because that's my journey, but everybody's journey is different. But no matter what, that ancestral connection back to Africa, back to this practice of respecting Mother Earth, respecting the water in my body, respecting all of the elements that allow me to be an aware, conscious being, comes down to what we learn in ceremony. And as an extension, goes into our performance. I know that we were talking about performance spaces, but no matter what, in the ceremony, that dance is so that somebody with arthritis in their knees is able to breathe and like start that undulation in a micro sense, like within, keeping it centered. Nadia was talking about in ceremony, like it's about you and the Orisha. Like, yes, it's about your Ori, from Oria Dauri, Inori, Porin, your whole entire body. Taking that energy and being in this micro circuit of just circulation, of breathing, and of aligning with these stories of the Orisha that are selected. These are selected stories that hold embodied knowledge, guidance, wisdom, that help us situate be going on right now. And what we understand is that things are cyclical. So the same way that we're in our bodies for our own circuit, in our own body meditation and healing within, we're also understanding that the songs that we're singing, the dances that we're doing, the drum beat that is actually following the dancer, right? The drums are supposed to follow the dancer, right? That all of these songs and all of this storytelling that's happening are stories that are repeating themselves. They're stories that are repeating themselves over and over and over again. And the beauty about African tradition, because it is the mother tradition of all traditions, because Africa is the mother of everybody, we're looking at these stories, these ancient stories, to understand what's going on in our bodies in the present. So it's this Sankofa that's happening as we're circulating all of this energy and meditating to these songs, to these Oriki of Orisha, and not just of Orisha, but also the ancestors. Because every song that we sing in ceremony isn't necessarily for the Orisha. Sometimes it's for an ancestor that was related to that Orisha. For instance, when we sing to Orobambi or that song for Oshun, it's not necessarily about Oshun, but it's a song that is related to the path of Oshun. So again, that's just a short example of how we use ancestral veneration to connect with our Orisha. We can't just skip straight to Oshun. There's ancestors all in between that relationship. And all of them are invigorated. All of that story is emulated and embodied in the present moment. So all of that ancestral knowledge is being brought into my physical body that's going on, that's dealing with all of the situations that's happening in 2021. And that's how that ancestral information becomes relevant to what's going on right now. And I speak English. So whether I speak perfect Yoruba or not isn't the point. Whether I'm saying Catholic prayers, whether I'm singing, whether I'm calling Oshun mother or Iya or Madre or sis, whatever it is that I can relate to Oshun, depending on what my knowledge is, Orisha spirit consciousness is going to meet me where I'm at. It's where I'm at. And so when we work on ourselves in ceremony and we breathe and we sing, it just continues to awaken our ancestry and continues to push us forward with where we are, and making sure that we're able to connect that information, connect that embodied experience of spirituality to push lives in direction, walk away cleansed, to walk away with, you know what? After I did that dance and I sang that song, like I could actually connect with that energy. Maybe I don't have to react in this particular way anymore. Maybe I have a different decision that I can make now, you know, with the wisdom of Orisha. And just to quickly speak about performance, you know, I was introduced to performance really from my parents, but my biggest memory is linking up with La Mora in Cuba, and she created one of the founding members of her company when I was 11 years old as a drummer and a singer. And one thing I will tell you about La Mora is that she respects her culture. She respects her ancestry. And she's made sure that Folklorico honors the story. She always says, do not change my dance. Do not change the language. She has made sure that Folklorico and the way that the folkloric schools are made are to preserve and educate. They're made to preserve and educate. And so those are good pathways for folks who need to get information and who need to learn. There's good and bad that comes with that because, you know, in everything, good comes with the bad. So I support Folklorico, but I also understand the vast difference between dancing on the stage and in the ceremony, because in the ceremony, it's supposed to be for everybody, for that baby, for that elder, for somebody who's on their deathbed. If they can't even get up and dance, they should still be able to breathe and get into the pulse of that, even if they just tap in their finger to the rhythms and to the songs that we're doing in ceremony. That's what that's for. And everybody should always be invited to do that and to feel alive. On stage, it has to be this macro, showcase of that energy. But in the ceremonial room, it's really about making yourself feel alive and owning that. Yeah.
Gotcha. What we're going to close with in our reflection is something important, is that in this current moment of the detrimental COVID-19 pandemic, right, the continual murders of Black folks globally, what does your spirituality, your art making and activism looks like right now? And Baba, Vince, you can start.
It's interesting because when we see all these things and how all the things in society are happening, these are the types of situations that this medicine was created for. There's been conflict forever, since the beginning of time. There's been persecution since the beginning of time, beyond recorded time. And these have been the remedies that have been created for that. Now, a lot of times, because in this westernized world, the remedies are looked at as, wives' tales or homemade remedies that don't carry the weight of what modern medicine or modern law can do. But we find out that, well, that's not, modern law and modern medicine aren't doing the job either. So what have we got to lose? And so I find peace in these practices and in these spiritual systems, because they allow me to see more than one side of the equation, because some of this are balance, having balance in your life, making sure that your character determines what direction that you go, making sure that we have victory and doing the things that we have to do to have victory against the negative forces that are out in the world. These are primarily like 101 level principles that when you have that with you, you can carry it. And when I go into the streets, and everybody doesn't have to see it. I don't wear all white and beads and my fila when I go down the street, when I'm going to the bodega. I don't necessarily need to do that. This is not the shrine. This is a shrine. This is the shrine. I am the shrine. Okay. And so I walk with my warriors. I walk with my shrine everywhere that I go. And so I don't have to walk with that sense of fear. Because if I allow what's going on in the world to get to me as a Black man who's grown up in the hip hop age, living in Brooklyn and Boston, which both bring their own situations, I wouldn't leave the house. But knowing that I'm armored up, I have Ogun with me everywhere I go. I have Ifá with me everywhere I go. I have the compassion of Oshun. I have the vastness of Yemaya and the depth of Olokun. I have all of that everywhere that I go. So when I can walk in myself, there is a confidence that can be off-putting to people. because they do not walk without with the fearlessness that I have. Now, does that mean that I walk without fear? No. If I've lived long enough to have things that and people who I care about, I have to have fear. But I am the warriors that I walk with. And that this allows me to go through the life, particularly at this time where a cold can kill me. Whether somebody sneezing down the block makes everybody flinch. I don't. Because, I did my work. And that's what I think that this, and then I can take that to the performance and be free. And and I don't want to monopolize all of this time that we have left, but a lot of what Oludaré was saying was about freeing the body and about being in touch with our breath and being in touch. This is liberation. This is freedom. People want freedom. People want that freedom on stage when they go up there. And they're like, okay, how can I have that? So they try to take pieces of it. And then they try to tell you and sell it back to you. And that's incumbent on us as practitioners, but also as artists in performance, in dance, where we use our spirituality to give us the freedom. You see the performance, we see where it came from. People want to pick and take from that. So it's incumbent on us to not be complicit in obliging them. And so that's what I want to take from this panel. That yes, there is a space between the temple and the stage. And yes, there is overlap, but let us remember that the two, they are not the same. They do not serve the same purpose. They do not serve the same people. And as long as we can go in with that mentality, then we can go onto the stage and in all of our freedom and give of ourselves and then take it with us when we walk out the door.
Gotcha. And like Andrea said, is that we are the cultural activists, right? In times of crisis, we turn to art. Folks consume art a lot, right? And then, we're not really supported. But artists, it's like we create think tanks or incubators of reflection, right? Reflection of what's going on, this dialogue, right? And it seems so during the COVID-19 pandemic, what the demands, the mobilization that's happening in the dance world, right? Is that folks are trying to really radicalize and try to deconstruct some higher education forms of dance training, right? Why is it that West African dance or dances that come from a very spiritual place are for one credit, right? But ballet is situated in the most beautiful studio and it's like 3 or 4 credits, right? And why is the West African dance class in the basement with the leak, right? So what's happening is that Black folks who are dancers and are training are thinking these thoughts, right? So we're always constantly adapting artists, right? And I think that's what we do as spiritual folks, right? Is that we're always adapting, right? We're always adapting to what we need, what's the thing at hand, how do we save each other, right? It's about saving each other, it's about healing, right? And like art, which Baba Vince talked about in our meeting of like, a lot of times there's a lot of separation between musical theater and dance and this and that. But it's very much like spirituality, everything is connected, right? And we need it all, right? And we need to deconstruct that colonial way of being of that. We're separating everything into silos. So let's see if I see a Q&A. So what authors or resources could folks engage in to further understand all of this?
So it's interesting that, okay, one thing I want to respond to is, Lord, losing my train of thought. But basically, like from what you were just saying, Nadia, about like how the dance and the arts are being radicalized right now. One thing I just wanted to touch on is that like they are connected, like you said, and compartmentalizing things isn't really down to what we really do at a practice. Like the theater of it all, the dance of it all, the song of it all, the medicine of it all, the scholarship of it all is all together. It's all together. And so I honor that in what we do. And so it's sometimes even difficult to think of myself as an artist versus a healer, right? Like I really look at myself as a healer first, as a ceremonial priest first, before I look at myself as an artist. Even though there's really no need to separate the two. as well. And I think it's important that there is a Sankofa, that there is a look back to the origins of like why we even do our art. What is the healing space that is born from? And so I'm actually putting a call out to people who practice African traditional dances in the folkloric realm, or any Black dances at all, challenging them to dig deeper into the healing practices of what that means, of what that truly, truly means.
Yeah. I also wanted to acknowledge what Nadia we just said. I think for people at this moment, people who have been taking care of their life, their everyday life, link with native, with indigenous traditions. At this moment, we have the discipline of take care of our health. Health, it is something important in indigenous traditions. What you eat, your hygiene, you know, how you dress, what time you leave your house, what time you have to go back, all these things. It's so helpful for us right now. It is not, we didn't have to change too much our life in this. We just have to respect not to be gathering and use masks. So discipline, it is important. It is a part of traditional practices. And if we are on that, we're not in big trouble on this. We bring our dance class under the tree. My dance class during the summer starting June until November was on the park under the tree. We are not six feet apart. We are 10 feet apart. Winter arrived, we cannot dance. We did walking into the woods, walking with the ancestor, walking in silence. So our capacity to improvise, it is incredible. It is all learning through our practice, our traditions, you know. So those traditions are alive, and we adapt and modify all the time. So even if we don't have a dance studio with 3 floors and our studio is on the basement and there is a dripping water there, we put probably a vase and make this space a sacred space and do a dance circle around that dripping water and make that is sacred for us. Zombie-tutu, you know. So like what is incredible in this, we always like ready to improvise to solutions, you know. It is a life situation. So I think at this moment, with the reality of the virus, indigenous medicine, it is important. It is in the first place. It's the first thing we have to do it before taking chemical pills. Go to the herbs and respect the boundaries that we have to respect to protect ourselves and protect others.
Ashe. I wish we had more time. I really do, but this was such a sacred space. I see that there's no other pressing questions. Please give a round of applause from wherever you are for our wonderful panelists. I'll do it on behalf. Modupwe, Ache, Ashe, Ayibobo, Luz. Thank you so much, everyone.